Let's get Jerry Palm in here, Jerry, and it's another no-win situation for North Carolina coming up because they've got Syracuse next, and you really don't get much credit if you win that game because of where Syracuse is at. Not looked at as a good team, barely top 100 in the net rankings. Lose to Syracuse and your at-large chances could blow up in your face. Are those games really worth anything, or is it just trying to keep your head above water?
It really is just trying to keep your head above water. I mean, there's no real benefit to beating Syracuse other than you didn't lose to Syracuse. And this would be a quad 3 loss for North Carolina, who, 2 weeks ago, the best thing we could say about them was they didn't have any bad losses. Well, then they lose at home to Pitt. Now you lose at home to Syracuse. There's already a lot of pressure on trying to beat Duke in the final game of the regular season to shore up this resume. But if you lose to Syracuse, you might get to the point where that alone may not be enough.
Yeah, and that's the huge opportunity coming up this weekend at Duke to close out the regular season. That would be a quad 1 win, just their second of the season, and it would be a huge, huge feather in the cap for Hubert Davis in North Carolina if they can get that done. Let's move on to San Diego State, a team that's on your 10 line right now, and really a chance to solidify a tournament spot tonight. A quad 1 opportunity. You can watch it on CBS Sports Network. Really tough place to play at Wyoming.
Yeah, San Diego State's got an interesting resume. They're also not very good against the better teams that they've played, like North Carolina. And now, unlike North Carolina, they don't have any bad losses. Their losses are all quad 1 as well. But they don't have enough good wins. But they did beat St. Mary's, and that's a win that looks a lot better today than it did on Friday. So, but this is a real opportunity for San Diego State to pick up another quality win on the road in conference play. It would be a big benefit to them. They still got Fresno State and Nevada left, so the work isn't done regardless of what happens here tonight. But this would be a real cushion for them going into those last 2 games.
Again, that one is on CBS Sports Network at 9 Eastern tonight. San Diego State facing Wyoming. It has been a glorious season of resurgence for the Mountain West, Jerry. Currently 4 teams in your field. What has gone into this great resurgence for one of the better conferences, I think, in the country that goes overlooked many years?
Yeah, basketball west of the Rockies has really been good this year. The Mountain West has been a big part of that. And really, the way these conferences make their bones, if you will, that really prove themselves is what you do outside the league. And the better teams in this conference have performed well outside the league, and that's why you're showing up now with teams that can qualify for the NCAA tournament more than we're used to seeing. I think the last time they had as many as 3 was 2015. So they've got a legitimate chance to put 4 teams in this bracket. And it's been really a banner year for the Mountain West. And the teams that are just outside that top 4, there's still some pretty good teams there as well, even though they may not be tournament quality teams.
Yeah, Utah State, for instance, a team that's always a tough out as well. Let's move to the Big 12 because there's a big game tonight. It's a ranked matchup. Baylor facing Texas. The Bears back on your 1 line after beating Kansas over the weekend.
Yeah, what a great win for Baylor. They've been playing shorthanded for so much of this season, different guys going in and out. And now Chuma Chacha was out for the season, yet they still, are able to beat Kansas at home and move up to the number 1 line. That's not a secure spot at all because Kansas is still right behind them. And, these 2 teams may go at it for a while in a very strong Big 12 where nobody in that league is outside the top 75 of the net.
Yeah, Texas, one of those teams firmly in the tournament. Where are you seeing the Longhorns right now, and what can they do to improve their stock moving down the stretch?
Well, for Texas, they're in the top 25. They're like a 5 seed, I think, in my bracket at the moment. But Texas, you're in the Big 12. You've got Baylor coming to your place tonight. That's a great opportunity to move up a seed line just by winning a game like this. And there are more opportunities because you're in the Big 12. So you can play Baylor, Kansas, Texas Tech. There's some good teams in this league, and even the teams that may not qualify for the tournament are very tough outs. So it's somebody every night that's really challenging you.
An amazing weekend of college basketball with all those top teams losing, Gonzaga included. Still your number 1 overall seed because when everybody else behind you loses, there's really nowhere for you to fall. They only have 1 or 2 games left before the NCAA tournament because they get the triple bye all the way to the West Coast Conference semifinals, which begin later on this week. Is there any way Gonzaga doesn't get that number 1 overall seed if they win the WCC tournament?
No, I think they're the number 1 overall if they get through this tournament, and especially as dominant as they've been in this league, the loss to St. Mary's notwithstanding. This is a team that is dominating what is also a very good league. We talked about West basketball. The West Coast Conference could put 4 teams in the field as well. So, this has really been a great year for this league, and it's helping boost Gonzaga up and give them some protection from the teams chasing them, because they actually have opportunities to get somewhat resume-building wins in their league, more than they normally get.
We saw a little flip-flopping on the 1 line with Baylor replacing Kansas falling to that 2 line because of the game this past weekend. All 2 seeds are in action tomorrow on Tuesday night. Which 2 seed? Duke, Kansas, Providence, Wisconsin. Which 2 seed has the best chance of getting to that 1 line?
It's definitely Kansas, because of the strength of their remaining schedule and the opportunities to really put a gap between them and everyone else. And there really is a gap between 5 and 6 at this point in the bracket. Kansas, with the chances that they have left to play quality opponents every time they take the floor, has the best chance to move up to that 1 line.
Yeah, talk more about the gap, because that's one thing I'm always interested in going to a tournament. Like, sometimes there's just a one team that seems to be way ahead of everybody else. So there's a big gap between the top overall seed and everybody else. Sometimes there's a huge gap between all the 1 seeds and the 2 seeds. Where do you see that gap going into the tournament this year?
Well, right now it's between number 5 overall Kansas and number 6 Duke, who's got a few bad losses in the league. And because the ACC is way down this year, to the point where the second highest team in my bracket is Notre Dame, and they're in an 8-9 game. So it's hard for Duke to resume build in their own league this year, which is really unusual for the ACC. Plus, everybody's trying to give Duke their best shot, because that's the only chance those teams have to resume build, is to try and beat Duke. So because Duke just doesn't have the quality schedule that these other teams have, it's going to be hard for them to jump up to a 1 line.
All right, Duke, the only team in the ACC with a net above 40 right now going into the last week of the regular season in the ACC. Let's talk bubble teams once again, Jerry. And a Florida team among your last 4 in action Tuesday night at Vanderbilt. What can they do here down the stretch to solidify that tournament spot with a 500 record in conference play?
Yeah, the conference record doesn't really matter, but what they need to do is avoid losing games like this. I mean, they've already got a loss to Texas Southern at home. They cannot afford quad 3 losses, and maybe even some quad 2 losses. Look, this is a road game in the conference. Vanderbilt's going to be ready. You got to show up ready to play, but Florida can't afford to take any more losses like this. And then when the opportunities do present themselves for the resume building wins against the top 6 teams in this league, all of which are way ahead of Florida at this moment, and Florida's the 7th best team, then you take advantage of that. But Florida's margin for error is razor thin at the moment.
That opportunity would come later on this weekend against Kentucky to close out the regular season. Michigan fell out of your bracket, fell out of the top 68. They are the 69th team, if you will, the first team out of the tournament. But, Jerry, they have a bunch of big opportunities down the stretch. Their last 3 games are potential quad 1 victories beginning Tuesday against Michigan State.
Yeah, this stretch of the season really started with the Rutgers game last week, where they were going to play 4 straight home games. They beat Rutgers. They lost to Illinois. Now they're going to get 2 teams that are, in terms of quality, in between those 2. Their rival, Michigan State at home, Iowa at home. These are probably must-wins if Michigan State is going to enter the Big Ten tournament without having to win the whole thing, because you end the season at Ohio State, and that will be their 4th game in 8 days. And that's asking a lot if you need to go into Ohio State and win. So these 2 games are going to really be important for Michigan State to start to build up the kind of a record that'll give the selection committee at least the opportunity to select them.
As you've mentioned before, conference record doesn't matter. Conference standing doesn't matter. Overall win-loss record seems to matter, though, and Michigan's only 3 games above 500. What does that mean?
Well, historically speaking, for the pre-pandemic tournaments anyway, when we've played full seasons, only 1 team has gotten an at-large bid that was worse than 4 games above 500 going back to 1994. So that may not be criteria specifically, but it's also not coincidence. So that's been the historic minimum for getting an at-large bid. And Michigan is not quite there right now. And if they end up, 16-13, 17-14, whatever, they're probably going to the NIT.
Okay, let's move on to a big bubble game coming up on CBS Sports Network tomorrow night in the A10. VCU is among your first 4 teams out. St. Bonaventure, not among those teams, but close. They might be, I don't know, I would guess maybe somewhere between your 5th to 8th team out of the tournament right now. Both of those teams have won 7 straight. What kind of a chance is the winner of that game going to have getting into your field eventually?
For VCU has a better chance because they have a better resume to start with. So VCU is among the first 4 out in my bracket currently. You were right about Bonaventure. They're between 5 and 7 out. So, but the problem for St. Bonaventure is that they've taken a couple of bad losses, and one to Virginia Tech that was a 30-some point loss. And because of that, the net really doesn't like them because the net's pretty heavily influenced by margin of victory. So they've got to get some big wins and win by some big margins if they can to try and get that net ranking boosted up. Not that the net ranking alone is decisive in any way, but if you've got a net ranking around, 85, 90, the committee might just think, that's not even really worth looking at.
And the highest net ranking to ever get in, 73. Now, if St. Bonaventure keeps winning, they're gonna best that because that is a quad 1 opportunity tomorrow night at VCU. Jerry Palm with us as we talk bracketology here on CBS Sports HQ. Bracketology updated every day now as we move within 2 weeks of Selection Sunday. You can hear our college basketball experts Matt Norlander and Gary Parrish on the Eye on College Basketball podcast. Download it wherever you get your audio.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.